welcome to yet another episode of Cross-Border Conversations. Cross-Border Conversations is a Stir original video series that features conversations between thought leaders, both across countries and continents, as well as creative disciplines. The format is simple. It's actually an easy flowing chat between two people who can be imagined literally sitting in their drawing rooms, only a virtual one in this case. They are absorbed in moments of revelation in each other's life journeys, sharing anecdotes, experiences, and all along inspiring and sharing insights with all of us. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to have Takashi Kudo of teamLab and Lara, Lesmes, and Fredrik Hellberg of Space Popular. Takashi is the communications director with teamLab, which is a Tokyo-based international art collective. We have all been very, very inspired by the work teamLab has been doing over the past several years. It comprises of interdisciplinary group of specialists, including artists, programmers, engineers, computer-generated animators, mathematicians, and architects. Their collaborative practice seeks to navigate the confluence of art, science, technology, as well as the natural world. A graduate from the Waseda University in Tokyo, Takashi initially worked as the editor-in-chief of a video game magazine at Stockholm before he moved back to Japan. And when he moved back, he looked up his old friend, Toshiyuki Inoko, which is a well-known fact that he's the founder of teamLab. With over a decade of being associated with the collective, Takashi now manages teamLab's entire branding aspects while committing himself to specific projects that need growth hacking. Takashi, although his business card mentioned that he is the communications director, he says that he really doesn't have a lot of interest in the job title. He says there's no point in individual names, and he believes that his work is like oxygen, well, because no one can really communicate without it. Welcome to the talk today, Takashi. Lara and Fredrik are at the helm of London-based multidisciplinary design and research studio called Space Popular. The kaleidoscope practice, it creates spaces, objects, events, and interestingly, both in physical and virtual worlds, concentrating on really how the two blend together and looking at this aspect for the immediate future. Lara and Fredrik met while they were studying at the Architectural Association in London in 2011, where they now are teaching a course called Tools of Architecture. They founded Space Popular in 2013, and while they were in Bangkok, and since then they have really completed buildings, exhibitions, public artworks, furniture collections, and interiors across Asia and Europe. They've also done a lot of work in virtual architecture space in the immersive internet. So welcome Lara and Fredrik. And as deceptive as their background seems today, they are actually in one corner of Stockholm in a quiet little cabin. So don't get distracted by the city view that's right behind them. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in for this conversation. I am handing it back to Takashi, Lara, and Fredrik.
We were super curious, Takashi, to hear more about your time writing about video games, and also it was so interesting to hear that you obviously have that interest relating to the work that you've been doing with teamLab. Can you tell us a little bit about what magazine was it, and what were you doing, and maybe video games, how has it influenced your work? That'd be super interesting to hear.
I like it. with teamLabs is, we are teams, and we make some kind of output with teams. So I'm just one of the, like teamLabs, and it's always like a process to create. Is first we have its very ambiguous ideas, and try to create all the like prototypings and try and errors, and it's make that. And I am just one of that. So it's all my comment from now is it's not like offshore team labs. It's some part is maybe, and it's some part is very much it's in my personal like opinions or it's a personal comments. And about some first question for the like games. I don't know, I'm 43 years old and I grew up with Nintendos and it's, arcade centers, and it's, I don't know, it is like the game was like an oxygen. I was playing the games when these are like 6-7 years old, maybe 6 years. Yeah. First time, so my father bought me the Nintendo, and it's after that I was into the Sega, and it's all the games. And I just left Japan, and I started to be kind of homeless. I was just doing the street performance. So I was in a editor-in-chief, but I was homeless much longer than that, like 6 years. I was just in a street performance and making fires, and it's traveling from Asia to the Arabic country like Lebanon and Syria, and it's going north, and it's ended up in Stockholm. And because of this, I had some friends in Stockholm, and I didn't have money at all. And I just calling to my friend, and they said, "Yeah, you can stay at my house." And I said, "Wow, that sounds nice." And I haven't been in Stockholm, so I just visit them, and it's the first I thought just like 2-3 weeks, but somehow it's catch my heart, and it became 6 months, and I needed a visa, and it's okay, I need to work maybe after 6 years, like proper work, and I like games, and I had a skill of these editors, so it's okay, I can work for these published companies.
So interesting that in a way, I think that when you say that you started playing like Nintendo and these things, because I mean, obviously, I think that you also, we constantly meet people that do similar work to us or have similar interests, that has had a background as a child or teenager playing a lot of games. Mm-hmm. And we often, developing virtual worlds or doing a lot of very heavy computational 3D work and simulation and this kind of stuff, realized that a lot of the know-how and the knowledge we share with the game world. And I was just thinking that it's so interesting that you mentioned, because I was probably exactly the same old when my dad brought home the exact same Nintendo.
Yes.
And it's, if you look at movies or comics or, we also watched manga from Japan, but it's very different. It was translated. We only got very little, but
still, that was huge also.
Yeah, that was huge. But with games, we got the exact same games. Japanese games or American games.
And there is no language. I think it's not only the know-how, but it's funny thinking back and realizing that, like, wow, the impact of these things. I remember with Nintendo, and the first days playing Super Mario, and I was getting the breaks from where my older brother would like have to go to the toilet, and then like I got to play a little bit. But I remember that we would talk before going to sleep, and we were trying to do this kind of meditative exercises to make sure that we would dream about being in the game. And I now think that is so fun. Like the ultimate thing was to be able to go into that world of fantasy. That is, no different from when you saw a really like amazing drawing or comic, and you just wanted to be there, and you don't really think about it. But then it's like, oh my God, the work that I am doing now is is kind of trying to realize that, no? And the work of teamLab is basically putting you into this crazy worlds.
Yeah, you're like inside of the game world. I don't know if you see the worlds that your team creates as being like game worlds, but
at least for me, it's when I was playing the games and when I was kids, and it's still now maybe. It's I couldn't see it's a boundary between its games and its realities or this physical world. And sometimes it's very weird. It's when you are jumping, there is no sounds, but it's inside of my head there are the sounds, and it's like it's a Mario. We try to it's a science of this and how affected us of the games. And that one is also I really wanted to ask you. It's a question. It's later, but it's how do you create something? It's like when we create something with teams, it is very hard, and especially like an art is something we cannot explain by words, and it's and it is like a joke. I really like it. It's Monty Python's, and it's like and it's like a common history and it's memories. Already, we can laugh about that, but it's like important things for the like creativity with teams is sometimes, as I said, if we don't know, we cannot explain by words. So we need to create something. It's like unconscious or conscious. It's our common sense. Like for example, like I said, it's we making prototypes, and it's or it's plot rooms. It's like in a space, and we try to be inside of theirs. And it's sometimes we felt something weird. It is not right way, but we cannot explain what is wrong. And it's like that times we just talk. This is not like like good feeling as like it's when I played in the F-Zeros, and it's like it's more like more high tensions.
I know that you've said that teamLab was not in the beginning thought of as being artists in the typical sense. But do you think that this kind of doing work that is beyond words that cannot be described can relate to the fact that because I mean we also do work that in some ways is like art, but it's always within.
We're always having to explain ourselves. Actually,
yeah.
I was thinking more if this is I found this we were living in Bangkok for a very long time, for 5 years, and working with both students but also other professionals there. I found that people was quite comfortable working intuitively, working beyond words. And it makes me think, I mean, it's obviously one of these like huge generalizations, but if there is like an Eastern versus Western sort of not an approach, but like that there is a comfort that I would like to learn from, which is to be comfortable when you cannot put something into words, whereas we are constantly forcing ourselves or being externally forced to explain ourselves, and that the ideas of like what is objective or the importance of rationale, meaning you can express it and explain it verbally, if that is something different. I mean, I certainly found that, especially teaching in Bangkok, that there were not everybody, but I encountered many people who was very comfortable running with the project without necessarily having to have this like everything figured out or everything in a sort of rational ground shaped by words. And I think that is an incredible quality.
You know, what's interesting is also this entire overlap in both your practices and belief in the virtual and something which is sort of away and distance from real. So to that extent, it is purely about experiencing a space virtually, and everything that teamLab does, well, not everything, but a lot of what teamLab does is also around a virtual experience?
I think it's, like we do it, same kind of things. It's, like just three things. First thing is, we still don't know it's, our output is art or not. It's like, it's going to decide it in the histories. So it's maybe 20 years later, if it's our output could change its word, maybe people called our output as art. And it's from the beginnings, it's, we try to make some things we had desires and we had a passion to create, but it's, we didn't know how to code. So it's, for now, it's, we call it art. It's, but it's, anything is fine. And it's, second part is, I said it's like a joke. It is like on a process to create. This is kind of important for us is, like when we explain the joke by words, in the same time as we cue the joke. It's like if we could explain the joke of this, why we are laughing about it's in a Monty Python, just after that, it's, it's a perfect way, if I could explain, maybe it's now we cannot laugh anymore. It's there is a certain territory of this we cannot explain by words. And it's this part is we called your part is like an art. And it's this as a power to change the world. That is what we believe.
Because the work that we do, for instance, in the exhibition that we just finished, Freestyle at the Royal Institute of British Architects, because of who the institution is that commissioned us to do the exhibition, it's an institution for architects, and the whole brief and everything is to look into specific artifacts of architectural history, in this case, books on architecture and elements from their archive. And we put forward a thesis in a way that, and what we developed over these 2 years we were working on this project, is that it's both experiential, the actual exhibition, but the content is, I don't know if it's a kind of conflict. It's not really experiential in that way. It's more kind of what we normally see in exhibitions, where it's like a book that someone has pasted on the wall. We try and not do that. Whereas the work that we have both seen just online and the work that we have actually experienced from teamLabs, it somehow transcends it all. There's no difference between the experience and the content. But I know that one piece that we saw, for instance, used letters, like symbols and specific elements that you needed to read them, even if you saw them very experientially. But there was something to understand, like a kind of a logic behind the experience.
But I think it has to do also with the, like, you see that you call what you do art, we call what we do architecture. And I think that slight differentiation actually maybe makes a larger difference in the approach, whereas art does not need to necessarily, or is usually produced out of the artist, and then it's made available to the people. However, like architecture is usually commissioned. No? And I think the fact that you work under that basis, and that maybe you're even educated under that basis, means that as an architect you always have this thing that, like, it has to be very well understood. It has to, because it cannot be purely my creative expression, which most of the time it really is mostly that. However, there is always this ambition or this almost illusion of it being a delivery to something that has been asked of you. And the idea of the brief is so strong in architecture that it's almost impossible to operate outside of that. Like, you need a problem, you need a question. And I think that's what then leads to thinking about the work and talking about the work a lot and constantly rationalizing the work to have that sense that you are responding to this that has been asked of you. Even though then we forget about, in architecture, people tend to forget about appreciating the personal footprint that you have on every piece of work. And we think that everything is right, everything is not problem solving. You are making a creative mark on everything you do. And I think if we looked at that more and with more freedom.
One really interesting thing in relationship to this is that us being architects, obviously in many cases, and we do exhibitions, in many cases we would very much like to operate like artists, largely because of the freedom that the institutions that commissions art usually affords the artist. And also to some degree, the way that the openness that the audience often has when seeing art versus seeing architecture. But in contrast, I think when I see your work in the work of teamLabs, which is often contained in a space of art. I mean, I can have a secret dream that I hope that you would get an architectural commission to like redo the whole center of a city or something like that.
It's more like how we recognize word. That is, we have interest. And the thing is, like when we create something on our output, it's most of the times we do, it's like projections or it's like more like space installations, because like we believe it's, we recognize the world, it's not only eyes and it's, or ears, and it's much more like physical things. And we wanted to, as you said, is we wanted to bring the people to be inside of it, like a digital world. And if we are living inside, like after 50 years later, if you are living like it's like a ghost in the shells or it's a matrix, and we had it's like some kind of the code inside of our brains, and it's if it could be inside of it, the virtual world or something, it's as like physically, maybe it's going to be changed. But for now is like I like games and I like movies and it's all the digital things, but still it is like screens, and it's in a small window to see that it's in another world, and we want it to be inside with it in that digital world. And it's what we are creating, and that's what you are creating. It's like it's that means it's there is no difference. It's like just anyway we are making it like in a three-dimensional space. So so far we try to create of it, try to increase of this physical world. That is what we have interest, because of that we can exist with other peoples in same times in the same lives. It's not like it's you and it's a screens one by one. It, like it's more like you're inside of it, this physical world.
I have a question as well here, and if you can add to that as you're responding. When you imagine something that's obviously all in your head and imagination, you probably bring it to two-dimensional as you're planning the drawing of it and the layout of it. And then it goes in a physical space to experience. So that's 3-dimensional plus the experience. And then the shot work is seen by us and the viewers across the globe back in 2-dimensional through the screen. So it's really going across 2D and 3D multiple times. How does that change the way your viewers are really sort of consuming your work?
I think from the beginning, it is like 3 dimensions. Inside of our mind, it's, we don't create from this 1 dimension or 2 dimensions.
Yeah.
And it's, we didn't have it digitals. So we had papers and it's a pen. So we had to expand on the paper. It means 2 dimensions, but it's inside the mind. I don't know about you, but it's I think you guys also, it's inside of your mind. It's completely 3 dimensions. And it's from the beginning, we are creating from the 3 dimensions. But it's when we see that it's that 3-dimension world, we are using our different device of it's like a PC or a screen. So it's become 2 dimensions, but it's always we see it 3 dimensions. We teamLabs, and it's also I think it's in the same process, and it's everybody has its 3 dimensions or it's a 4 dimension inside our mind, and we just try to show some things on this physical world. We don't have it any other way to do. So it's a real using of the light. It means the projections or LEDs or screens. So it's become 2 dimension. Only that. So it's like Super Mario or whatever. It's they're not making from the 2 dimensions. I think they're making the 3 dimensions. And when you create some things, everybody has it's like 3 or 4, 5, 6 dimensions.
I mean, I think there is like always this sense that something is material or immaterial, and that's a huge difference. Whereas it is not, like as long as it is 3-dimensional and all around you, then it has the same properties, which is certainly something we definitely stand behind as well, that argument. And I think the big difference is something that you were saying before with this, like, is it contained within a frame or is it not? And for example, we find a lot of inspiration in historical examples, such as like palaces painted all with frescoes, whereas it's not the same looking at that, being in that environment, that looking at a picture, at a painting, no matter how incredible it is contained within a frame. And I think that containment is what marks a huge difference. At least for us, we only recently started working with worlds that are purely in the computer, just mainly the past few months, because we wanted to make them available to anybody, that you don't have to go into a gallery space. But we only started doing that recently, and it's been hard because you're used to understanding like whatever I do, material, immaterial, physical, digital, as long as it's all around me, I can use the same design criteria. Whereas when I'm designing things that are contained within the frame, that's really, really kind of a different thing, at least for us.
It's popular as well. I mean, your typical work is very bold with heavy patterns, lots of colors. So do you imagine using the virtual sort of space as your quote unquote a work of art which need not see the light of the day, which need not ever be built? And can you ever imagine an architecture in sort of virtual minimalism, which is quite contrary to what you usually do?
I mean, I think we are very interested in polychromy, intricacy, in places where the eye can rest, right? Places for the eye to travel through. But at the top of everything is a spatial experience. So if there was a project where there was a strong interest in having a space that has less features, be it because you want to create a degree of contrast, or because you want to create that, give more importance to, or like create a space that is much more self-reflective, then we'd definitely do that. So it's not, but I mean, so far it seems like all the spaces that we have been creating are really into providing an experience rather than creating a space of self-reflection.
And this relates to in which layer of experience you are creating as an architect or as an artist. Because of course, if you're creating the building that something is going to go into, then you have to relate to all of the forms of experiences that someone might have. And obviously we're operating in a time when media is at a level where, you know, this is going to give much more interesting experience than most architecture. But if we look back a few hundred years, you know, in Japan or in Europe, wherever you go, before there was mass media, then the architecture often had to provide that. So in our, for instance, in our project, the Wardian case that we exhibited in Palazzo Reale, this is in a room in a palace, which is before electronic mass media, which in many senses then means that the architecture itself had to do the job of what now television or the smartphone is doing. So when if we talk about like minimalism or something like that, then the minimalism only relates to its other context. I mean, we strongly believe that, for instance, like modernism in architecture, where you see, or the very typical kind of apartment of today with white walls, it's only possible experientially because there is another kind of experience available, which in the 20th century has been television, and then video games, and then the VCR, and then eventually the smartphone and the laptop, and now VR. If we would all of a sudden hypothetically erase the possibility of having those experiences, then we would start to put pictures on our walls again, draw on the walls and have colors. And
like when you look at sacred architecture historically, right? If you look at sacred architecture in the past, it was full of features. And I think that applies to almost both, like generally for East and West, where you have these incredible painted palaces, or you have these sculpted stones in the West that are telling stories. And in recent decades, it has been, sacred architecture has gone more towards providing a space for self-reflection, and I think that certainly has very much to do directly with the state of the world outside of the sacred world, and now being the world of media. So it's providing a sort of contrast to that.
Yeah, I mean, could you see teamLabs doing a minimal experience, like a very
well, how do you define that? No, because the one with the clouds is really, it's just clouds. It's incredible, but of course it's incredibly overwhelming. It's not a minimal space in this. It doesn't give me space to think about other things. I'm fully in awe of that experience that I'm having. So I guess you want to express something and bring people somewhere.
I really want to invite you guys to be there.
I hope we can come.
We've been queuing for your exhibitions in London. It's always this like there is queues on the streets to get in. That it's an incredible phenomenon to see that. No, I have found it so encouraging to see the public response to your shows. It must be incredibly rewarding.
But what about the future then? We're super curious to hear what teamLabs are thinking about, because obviously we're similar generation, I think, and we now work a lot with VR in all of our exhibitions, the Ben Room, Freestyle, Value in the Virtual. We always use VR headsets, and we constantly say that the VR headset is like the fax machine of the technology.
That you're saying that
we're gonna laugh at ourselves.
Look so silly. We fully embrace that. We're just gonna laugh at how the time when we were using headsets. But
how do you imagine teamLabs
in
the next 20, 30 years? Yeah.
The things is we also don't know about the futures. Even tomorrow is what we don't know what's going to happen. But it's things is our dreams we have at least is we want to at least digitize of this world, or like something that we believe is what we want, and it's we are creating of it, like one artworks in this COVID situations. It's something that try to connect the people and the peoples, even from the homes And so it's, I can say it's a little bit like in a virtual world, artworks. We do create that, and we work for it, making some architect to the buildings, something that we imaged, but it's cost a lot. So it's, like we don't know it's going to be happen or not, but it's going to be try. And why I said it, we don't know the futures, because it's, we are like 600 peoples, but members, and it's our strategy of the business is very simple. We always say yes, and it's if the client asks us, it's like, do you have interest with some things, and we said yes, of course. And if we had opportunities, and we try to create, and of course there is limitations. Unfortunately, there is a budget, or it's a schedule, or it's like now we cannot fly to it's in other countries, or it's like there is so many limitations. But if we had opportunities, we try to take it, and we like to keep on creating some things, and I completely believe of it. It's not only us; it's all over the world. It's like you. It's also I can feel it. You have same kind of it. Common sense, and it's in the futures. Maybe we're gonna create futures. So
Yeah.
like what your dreams, it's gonna be futures. But it's anyway. We try to create a city itself by art, and it's living inside the art. It can be quite fun, but living inside with artworks, it's buildings.
Yeah.
These things
I was very curious about that. I saw that quote also, like we try to create a city inside art, and it's like how it made me think, how is a city not art already? And would you mean like a city as a coherent piece of art, and that we could consider that the city is now a very varied or a very mixed piece of art? And it made me realize that probably like when you look at your work is entering this environment that is really cohesive. So I am having this very one distinct experience as opposed to being having a very varied and so I imagine that would be a very coherent city, or like one layer of the city that I can turn on and I experience it through that lens.
Yeah, and we are don't misunderstand. We are not against of it anything, and it's like today's like a heritage, or it's like an old city. We love it, and the point is our artworks, or our output is just digital and the softwares. So it's not exist, and it's how to see it. It's we are using light, so it's maybe we can like transform the cities to be into something else, and because we don't use all the like materials, it's more like light. So like when we were kids, I was kids, the city and its whole house it's the same like it's in a house, but it's sometimes a stair, it's become like in a cliff, and sometimes it's some part it's completely different, and it's like that kind of stuff is maybe it's much more like near future things. It's I don't think we can create the whole city by ourselves. So it's and it's maybe like making by VR, so that is a little bit much easier to create. We don't know it's going to be like this, or still we don't know, but it's I think it's like I hope it's not everything is fixed, and the world is always changed, and we can influence of this world. It's as like if you go to the nature's forest, if you walk inside of the forest, some seed gonna be put in our clothes, and it's maybe I didn't realize that, and the walk is like 3 kilometers, and it's falling down, and it's making its new life without conscious, or it's unconscious. That kind of stuff is we have interest, and it's living is, something is we influence or it's affected each other's. And the human is also the same. And it's like this kind of conversation also is we very much appreciate. It's, like talking with others and it's influence each others and it's, like to see it same kind of visions. And it's, like your fellows and it's,
Takashi already shared that he was homeless
Yeah.
for 6 years. I think it doesn't get more anecdotal than that. That's it.
Yeah.
When I left Japan, it's, like I shaved all my hairs and I kept this part like it's super long. It's, now
memory.
so it's 5 meters or something, and it's, I don't know, it's my personal experience.
I think for us it's one thing that it's not too extreme in these days. If we look maybe pre-pandemic now, of course, because the world might change completely. But I think for us working together, obviously we started working like you had a very interesting kind of stimulating creative life before you started working as teamLabs. But for us, obviously, in the last 10 years when we've been working together, I think the 5 years when we were based in Bangkok, as being, born and raised in Europe, which has its, creative kind of context itself. But I think a lot of our work and the way we think about the world and the way we think about our work has been heavily dominated by that experience and the kind of not just understanding a different place, but basically our whole practice was founded in that context, both culturally and socially, and in many ways. And I think that now the further the time goes when we've been away from Bangkok and Thailand, we realize more and more how much of our practice is actually based on that experience.
So much, yeah, and how much we miss it actually. Yeah.